Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us here on Urban Debate on Mirror Now. I am Heena Gambhir. Today we are discussing an issue which impacts each one of us. Imagine if you have taken a loan from a bank to probably buy a house or a car or to maybe purchase something else, and for some reason or because of some kind of an emergency, you fail to pay the EMI of your loan. The bank will then first send reminders, then notices, and then recovery agents to ensure that the entire EMI amount is paid back, along with the interest. Now, during this process, the one who has taken the loan often goes through some or the other kind of harassment. But viewers, when it comes to companies, it seems that banks have got different rules. When a loan is given to someone by a bank, it is given from our deposits. And today, we want to focus on India's biggest bank fraud that has shaken the entire country. A fraud of close to 23,000 crore rupees. You heard me right. 23,000 crore rupees, and this one by ABG Shipyard. Now this, viewers, is our money swindled by someone. A sinking shipbuilding firm is behind what is being described as India's biggest bank fraud. Between 2012 and 2017, ABG Shipyard Limited, a Gujarat-based firm, purportedly defrauded 28 banks of 22,842 crore rupees. Now, according to Central Bureau of Investigation sources, ABG Shipping took loan from these banks and then diverted the money somewhere else. It allegedly made investments in its overseas subsidiaries from the loan amount, bought assets in the names of affiliated companies, and also transferred money to several related parties. Now, this case, viewers, was declared as NPA, non-performing asset or bad loan in July 2016. But with effect from November 2013, this is an important date. From November 2013, actually, for banks, this had become an NPA. It was declared as an NPA only in July 2016. And then in November 2019, the State Bank of India, India's biggest public sector bank, approached Central Bureau of Investigation. In March 2020, CBI sought clarification from the bank. Then only in August 2020, a fresh complaint was filed by the bank in this particular case. Now, from 2020 till 2022, CBI was doing its investigation, and only on 7th of February this year, the Central Bureau of Investigation has filed an FIR, and we all have got to know about this mega, rather the biggest fraud that we have come across in India's banking system. Now, this case has raised a storm of questions. How did the fraud go undetected for so long? How was the money really diverted? How did the fraud really come to light? And what led to the delay in registration of the FIR by the Central Bureau of Investigation? And above everything else, when is this loot going to end? That is going to be our key focus of discussion on Urban Debate this evening. Joining us on the broadcast right now is Gopal Krishna Agarwal, National Spokesperson of the BJP, Professor Gaurav Vallabh, National Spokesperson of the Congress Party, Shantanu Sen, former Joint Director CBI, Subhash Chandra Garg, former Finance Secretary of India, and we also have with us Deshratan Nigam, Senior Advocate, Supreme Court. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us here on Urban Debate on Mirror Now this evening. Gopal Krishna Agarwal, I want to begin the discussion with you because it is under your government that we are talking about the biggest loan scam, and the amount is not small, 23,000 crore rupees. It's huge. Can you tell us what really happened and when will this loot really end?
Hinaji, I would like to underline this issue that do you or your viewers understand evergreening? And you said that how it was, this fraud was continued. This fraud pertains to before 2013 when these loans were given, and it was structured in 2014, restructured. That was the rules of that time, UPA government. They were hiding all bad loans, evergreening them, whether it is Mehul Choksi, whether it is Vijay Mallya, All these loans were from the time of UPA government. In 2006 to 2013, they had given loans to the from 18 lakh crore to 52 lakh crores, and they were all bad loans. Phone banking was prevalent, and it is our government which has changed the rules, which has changed the process of identification of NPA, which has brought laws like Insolvency Bankruptcy Code, Benami Property Act, Fugitive Offenders Act. So now they are being put to books. They are being challenged. They are the recovery process has started. The identification has started. Earlier, the banks were being completely looted and evergreening. If a loan goes bad, restructure it, give a loan from
I
a
will
different
get
bank.
the Congress spokesperson respond to what you have said. I
So
will
you
get
have to
the Congress
understand. No, let
spokesperson
me
respond to
give me
what you've
30
said.
more
Gopal
seconds.
Krishna
You
Agarwal.
have to understand, Hina,
Okay,
that
okay, quickly, please.
evergreening, yeah, evergreening was the process through restructuring. I am a chartered accountant. I know these are complicated issues, and the camouflage was created by UPA, particularly the finance minister of that time. They had created a structure of camouflaging
Okay.
these bank loans and supporting these promoters. These are
Okay.
being
So
unearthed now.
you have
Unearthed.
made a point. I will get the Congress spokesperson to respond to that. But before that, Mr. Agarwal, I have one more question for you. You understand finance, and that is the reason why we've called you on the show today, because it's a little technical subject and we want to simplify it for our viewers. If you will take a loan, or I'll take a loan, or if our viewer will take a loan, from a bank, and if for some reason we are unable to pay our EMIs for, say, a month or 2 months, we all know what will happen to us. We will be harassed. First, the bank will send us notices, SMSs, recovery agents will be sent to our homes as well, sir. But why is it that for so many years, this was not exposed? That's my simple question. I really don't want to go into the technical details here. I
give
have
a
experts
simple
who will
answer to
explain
it.
to us the technicalities. But my straight question is about the double standard. For people like you, me, our viewers, we will be harassed even if we are unable to pay our EMIs for 2 months for any kind of an emergency. But why for corporates, nothing of this sort happens, sir?
So, Hina, this is the most important question, and I will give you a simple answer. One thing is that my or yourself or anybody doesn't have a boss in the finance minister who is complicit in your frauds. What was happening? Evergreening is a concept. One bank's loan is being not being repaid. The boss from the finance ministry earlier would call another bank and ask that bank to give him a loan so that he can repay the old loan and the new loan will start afresh. This is the evergreening process. They will restructure the loan, say that we have now restructured, now this is a new loan. This is the basic principle
So you are blaming
we have
phone
changed the
banking
rules.
during the UPA
And they
era
will
and
continue.
evergreening during the UPA era, and
And they will
because of that
continue
reason
not
today
to
we
identify
have the
it.
biggest loan fraud in our country. Let me
And
now go
therefore, one
across
after
to the
another,
Congress spokesperson
the
on the show.
loans are now
I
being,
got your point, sir.
yeah.
I got your point. Sir, I got your point. Okay, I got your point, sir. Professor Gaurav Vallabh, will you like to respond? Because the blame is now on the UPA government.
Heena, loot and escape and ease of committing fraud is the two flagship schemes by Modi government for the fraudsters. And I will give you point by point answer, Heena. In last 7.5 years, the total bank frauds are 5,35,000 crore in last 7.5. In other words, 5.35 trillion rupees. They had promised to have the economy of $5 trillion and gave us the bank frauds of 5.35 trillion rupees. Now I'm making one by one point. In 2019, this loan account was classified as a fraudulent loan account. What government, what Modi government, what finance minister was doing in last 3 years as far as this account is concerned. I'm talking about ABG Shipyard. In 2020, State Bank of India had written to CBI for a formal complaint why no action was initiated by CBI. In 2018, Heena, you will be surprised that the DRT bench of Ahmedabad had given a decision that collect 13,975 crore from ABG Shipyard owner Rishi Agarwal. If he is not paying, sell his personal movable and immovable property. Why no action was initiated by Modi government? And last but not least, why finance minister and prime minister is mum? Where is Rishi Agarwal? In which corner of the world he is? We want the answers to these questions. Coming to what BJP spokesperson was telling, he was telling that this was UPA era loan. Mr. Agarwal, if this is bad, if you feel that he is a bad human being, because UPA gave the loan to that gentleman, my simple question is that why he was roaming with Narendra Modi ji when a Korean delegation went as far as the Gujarat government is concerned. When Narendra Modi ji was the chief minister of Gujarat, he was a part of the business delegation. Why Rishi Agarwal was a part of business delegation in 2013? In 2011, 2012, and 20... Please don't, no.
You gave loan because he was close to Narendra Modi ji.
Keep quiet.
One second. In 2013, Professor Gaurav Vallabh, in 2013, I don't think anybody except the consortium of banks knew that this has become an NPA. So that is about the fact as far as this case is concerned.
That's a
okay, gentlemen, here, it's not a political debate that we are having. Let me just make it very clear. The show is about the people of this country. The focus is when will this loot really end? And we really want answers now because, it started with the Malia fraud and then Nirav Modi fraud, and now the amount has almost doubled, about 23,000 crores.
So my question is very simple, Heena, that why no action were initiated after 2019 when this loan account was there in abroad?
Yes.
Questions are asked by the anchors, not you.
Keep quiet.
Yes, that's a valid point that you are making, that, why nothing was done in 2019. Let's also, okay, gentlemen, please calm down. Let's also try and understand the process here. Other guests have been patiently waiting. Let's also try and understand the process here. Subhash Chandra Garg, former finance secretary, is with us right now. Shantanu Sen, former joint director, CBI, also is with us right now. So, Mr. Garg, now the case is quite complicated, and I want you to help us understand how is it possible that the 28 banks which had given money, which had given loan to ABG Shipyard over a period of time, even after figuring out that the account has turned NPA in 2013, did not do anything, never figured out maybe something is fishy, something is wrong. How is that possible, sir?
So, Heena, first, I think the very fact that you are having a debate is underlying the fact that it's a political matter, largely. Otherwise, you wouldn't be having the debate. And that has been triggered the moment the CBI has registered the FIR. But to answer to your question, the ABG Shipyard, I don't know personally anything about this company, but this was one of the biggest Indian company in the shipyard business. It was doing and constructing hundreds of the shipping things. The shipping industry went through a very bad phase after 2008 globally. So this successful company, somewhere around 2009-10, started sort of developing stress. The banks in 2013, and I do believe that the banks exercise their judgment as a professional bankers. No one in the ministry, whether it's the BJP government or the NDA or the UPA government, sits in the boardrooms and the credit committees of the banks and the consortiums of the banks to exercise whether we should extend further credit or we should do the corporate debt restructuring or not. I think by assigning and reducing it to that political slugfest, we are actually reducing these serious lending businesses to a very bizarre joke, if I may say so. I don't think we should reduce this to that level. But to answer your question, in 2013, when this was declared as NPA, after probably the shipping industry's fate was sealed, the government's change, incidentally. Even in 2015, the bankers made another attempt that possibly there is a chance to revive it. And they sort of renewed the capital, the facilities and all. But finally, in 2016, they realized that it's not going anywhere. The company is too sick. It might have committed some frauds or some questionable transactions, which we don't know. And they then slammed the door on the company. From 2016 to now, it's about 5 years plus. And nothing really has been dispersed to the bank. The process of recovering and the process of declaring this as NPA or a fraud or whatever is taking so much time. I think this is what we should also be finding out what takes. And unfortunately, our agencies involved, whether it's CBI has taken, the application was filed in 2019. The last one on which the FIR has been registered is August 2020. It's already more than 20 months since then. And CBI's track record of investigating the financial crime and fraud is not all that great to write about. I suggest we don't, we leave it to the banking industry to sort of resolve this and recover whatever. We have now agencies like NCLT where this case has already gone. If it is a lost case, so the two lines to be pursued there is that if it is a business lost case, then you sell it off, deprive the owners from the ownership of that company. And if it is fraud involved also, let the investigating agencies act fast, the CBIs, and discover who has committed fraud and punish them, jail them.
I think you've summed it up quite well. And the audit report, sir, that came out of Ernst & Young has actually revealed that probably it was just not about the sector not doing well, and hence the company, got into so much of trouble. In fact, the report, the audit report has revealed, sir, that how this money was being diverted, the loan amount was being diverted for personal use to overseas subsidiaries. The money was being diverted to related parties for buying properties, etc.
If this company had about 90 odd subsidiaries and the associate companies, there would always be some transactions. There is the presumption that every related party transaction is a fraud is perhaps not right. The audit committees, the auditors, the types of the Ernst & Young people must also have been the auditors of those companies. So I think it's a matter of detail one would need to go into. The audit report is, by the way, also for more than 3 years old by now. And if you look at the FIR, yes, which has been filed by SBI, the SBI says that none of the three entities of the SBI involved, whether it's Patiala Bank or Travancore or the SBI itself, none of their staff was at all involved. They have all been given clean chit. And the language which has also been used in the FIR suggests that the SBI also recognizes that there was perhaps a lot of business failure situation as well. So I don't think it's too simplistic, and I don't think we should be terming them as lewd or something. We should get into the bottom of it to find out what the real situation is.
So business failure definitely was a reason. Mr. Shantanu Sen, why 18 months delay on account of the Central Bureau of Investigation, in your opinion?
That's a very good question. And that will remain a mystery because the complaint was filed in January 2019, and then again it was supplemented in August 2020. And even if CBI did a preliminary inquiry, under the CBI manual, no preliminary inquiry should take more than 4 months, at the extreme 6 months. But this has taken 20 months. So obviously there is something to be questioned. And this whatabouter will not help us. This whatabout discussion will not help us. You did it, we did it, UPA and NPA doesn't really discuss. The issue which you have raised is that a fraud of 22,842 crore is involved in the matter. It may go up to 27,000 crores according to certain reports. There is an Ernst Young report which clearly says that there has been fraud perpetrated. The corporate debt restructuring for which this money was advanced was not done. The money was siphoned off. Yet we are sitting in 2022. There is no arrest. There is no interrogation. There is no recovery. There is no seizure of any or attachment of any of the properties of this company, which is clearly in fault. It may have been declared in NPA in 2016 and backdated in 2013, but the fraud was reported specifically by Ernst Young in 2019, and CBI has taken 20 months to inquire into the complaint, and it has finally found it justified, though belatedly. But now, what is the action? We cannot be confined to just keep calling people to be questioned. We want action. We want seizures. We want arrests. And what you're in the media, discussion should now revert to this area. Delay in action, delay in recoveries, not merely why the fraud took place. The fraud has taken place. Investigation has started, it means there is a fraud. CBI has taken 20 months to verify the complaint. And this 20 months verification means CBI found fraud, conspiracy, corruption. Now CBI has to take action. So let us forget what has happened because that is a part of investigation. Let us go ahead with action. Let there be recoveries made. And your discussion will help if this is activated.
But Mr. Garg is of the view that CBI's track record in solving such financial cases has not been very good. Will you like to respond to that? Because there are other means to look at these kind of issues.
Well, let me inform Mr. Garg that the biggest scandal of the UPA era was the stock market scandal. And a large amount of money was pilfered from the public sectors by Harshad Mehta and used as his own fund by a process of understanding with the banks. If Mr. Garg wants to go into these investigations, he will find that persons involved, whether it was in Maruti, whether it was in ONGC, whether it was in other public sector funds, were all investigated and convicted. You see, in our country, the process of trial is so long and so handicapped that there is not quick justice. The stock market scandal was fully investigated. If CBI's track record was poor, why is there a demand for CBI investigation from all corners of the country? Merely saying that CBI's track record is poor doesn't help you. Justify it. I will justify the stupendous investigation made in the stock market scandal, where CBI teams branched all over the country, arrested people, prosecuted all involved, including Harshad Mehta, and people like Mr. Krishnamurthy, doyens Even the finance secretary who allowed Harshad Mehta to give a lecture on the budget, he was so highly raised by the finance ministry. Finance ministry thought so highly of this scoundrel and allowed him to give them a budget instruction on budget when the finance ministry was closed. So let's not throw stones at each other. CBI has a record. CBI has stood by that record. And that is why there is a demand for CBI investigations even today. There has been a fall of standards possibly. People may have their views. But it is still the premier investigating agency of the country. And if CBI has taken 20 months, CBI should explain that. It must have taken 20 months to find out if there was fraud or only wrong financial business. Having found it as a fraud, CBI has started investigation.
So was it?
Now CBI not sit on its haunches, get after the people involved, arrest them and attach their properties.
Absolutely. You've summed it up quite well. Even now, since CBI has taken about 20 odd months to take action in this particular case, they really need to come out and explain. In fact, Mr. Garg, quick response to what Mr. Sen said. And also, we are being told from sources within CBI that, 28 banks had given 100 different kinds of loan, including term loan, bank of credit, etc., etc. So it's a little tricky thing, for them also to investigate. But I want to understand from you the process also. What is it that the banks could have done? There are 28 banks that we are talking about which had provided loan to this particular company over a period of time. What could have they done after the NPA was recognized, after it was out in the open? It was also featuring in the list of NPAs that RBI was coming out. Remember, so many RTI replies were being reported as well in about 2018 when Nirav Modi's scam was exposed. At that time, this company's name was also there. So what is it that the banks could have done that they didn't?
So I must agree with Mr. Sen that there have been some spectacular successes which CBI has achieved, including the investigation in the stock market scam and Harshad Mehta scam and all. Unfortunately, of late, that kind of record, which he himself also acknowledged, is not that spectacular and that great. But my worry is, in fact, flowing from the other factor. Now the RBI has instructed that every sort of fraud of 100 lakhs or something has to be reported to the CBI. And the CBI gets hundreds of cases reported every year. If we were to get the data collected, these are not generally sort of put into the public domain. The success of investigating into those fraud cases which are reported by the banks, even in terms of completing the investigation and then taking it to the prosecution and finally getting convictions, is what is very small in my judgment. So I would suggest these data are, because this has become more of a mechanical process now. And here I would like to respond to what the question you had asked, that once the banking internal system did not suspect any fraud until the EY report came. So the entire system was not treating this as fraud, it was only treating it as NPA. But even after that had come into the hands of the banks, if you read this FIR, it took banks, there are so many banks involved, from January 2019 to sometime in October 2020 for them to declare that as fraud. And some banks had not even declared fraud even until that. So taking that decision to declare this as fraud and report it to the CBI itself has taken inordinately last time. I would also draw your attention.
But sir, even that was done by SBI. Yes,
Sorry?
sir. Very
that's
quickly,
what.
sir, then I'll go across to Deshratan Nigam.
So
I'm
one
saying
minute
that,
only.
it was SBI only that had approached the Central Bureau of
Correct.
Investigation, sir.
Yes. But that FIR says that the evidence for the fraud would be provided by the Ernst and Young, not by the SBI. So even today, the SBI officers
Okay.
are not willing to come and say that this is a fraud.
That is the point we are trying to understand here. Why are the bankers not coming out and telling us what went wrong really? Why nobody could really figure out that things are not right? Mr. Deshratan Nigam has been patiently waiting. Sir, now in January 2019, Ernst & Young had submitted the audit report. It was only on 8th of November 2019 that SBI itself had first approached the CBI. Then 12th March 2020, CBI sought clarification. What really explains this kind of a delay, and where should where should one really go, because the amount that we are talking about is huge this time as far as banking frauds are concerned, sir?
No doubt, the amount is quite huge. And in fact, everything in India is governed under rule of law. Nobody can go beyond rule of law. And there are existing rules, as everybody pointed out, that initially it was, restructured under corporate debt restructuring on March 2014. But it could not be reorganized. That was the requirement of the law at that point of time. Then September 2014, an audit firm was, appointed to make a stock audit. And subsequently, that agency pointed out certain faults on the part of the accused company. I'm not saying fraud, certain, faults, they have used the word. So subsequently, it was declared after that, and it is purely a financial matter. No fraud has been detected till now. That it has become an NPA, and it was already in 2013, and it was only declared after the inquiry and investigation that it has become an NPA. That was prior to 2014. So entire period is clearly established that from 2005 to 2013 is the period. Subsequently, transactions have not taken place. So NPA was already, a cutoff date has already been given. So as per policy, the period covered was generally from when the investigation then the forensic audit was done, which is very important. The period of consideration was 2012 to 2017. And then also it was referred for NCLT under CIRP process, Corporate Insolvency Resolution process. These are the requirements of law. And then
Yes.
then subsequently the report came in between April 2019 to March 2020 that certain fraud has taken place. And not all banks, please remember. Now the SBI goes to this thing without the fraud case, please remember, to the CBI, files a complaint, CBI raises queries, and then the fraud case comes into the picture because all reports had come by then. So these were the requirements of the law, not that anybody deliberately has done it. And those have to be investigated. Now, once the final in 2020, August 25, 2020, the complaint went to CBI, the final one. Then the investigation is started. It's a complex investigation, as you rightly pointed out, 28 banks, hundreds of loans, and various types of loans, including cash credit loan, term loan, letter of credit, bank guarantee. And these are spread all over country. These 80 subsidiaries are spread all over the countries. So the process of declaring it as NPA, then the forensic investigation, which came to the conclusion of fraud. Then the problem, as CBI has told the media, that various states have withdrawn consent, general consent for CBI to investigate. That is the biggest challenge. 100 of cases in other cases have not been registered. So CBI also gets handicapped. Its hands get tied when like West Bengal has withdrawn, Andhra has withdrawn.
Okay.
These are the states which have withdrawn. So it creates complication. But the law is quite stringent. Please remember, law is very stringent. The onus is on the person
That's
So
an important
dramatic.
point, Deshrata Nigam, that you've raised. Let's get a response from Professor Gaurav Vallabh on that part, because CBI, Gaurav Vallabh, in a statement has also mentioned that about 8 states have withdrawn general consent, no consent in Punjab, Rajasthan, Bengal, Chhattisgarh, Maharashtra, Kerala, etc. And, that is a big issue. That is a big concern. And maybe that's the reason why such investigations get delayed. Your response.
I don't want to make any comment on Nigam Saab. Nigam Saab, you are a lawyer and making these comments, that doesn't look good for you, because these are the NPA cases, these are the recovery cases, these are the financial crimes, and these crimes have the banks is the one party, and the other party is the person who had done this default, who had done a fraud with the banks. So don't mix two issues together. And point number 2, Hina, is it a coincidence or experiment by the Modi government that whenever CBI files a FIR, before that the promoter leaves the country? Is this a sanyog or prayog, that before CBI files a FIR, because government gives time to the promoter to fly to the foreign destination, make a good house there near to the beach, send the photographs taking sun bath on the beaches, taking our 24,000 crore, and this is my money, this is your money, this is all your viewers' money, who is paying the taxes on time. Point number 2. Point number 3, very important point which we had missed. In 2018, Hina, the DRT bench of Ahmedabad had passed an order to the banks that recover 13,975 crore from this borrower. And in this order, it is mentioned that the borrower is having movable and immovable property, which is more than this amount. And banks had not initiated any action. कौन कोई बाबा मना कर रहा था क्या? Nigam Saab, is some Baba giving some dictations to the CBI or to the finance ministry that no need to initiate? Because nowadays
you've made a few interesting points, and I want to go across to Mr. Shantanu Sen, especially on the issue of consent, because, sir, this is something that CBI has also mentioned in its statement. Do you think it is a valid argument, in a case like this?
I'm afraid I do not agree with the CBI at all. West Bengal has withdrawn consent. Yet, under the Supreme Court direction, all investigations of poll violence are being done by the CBI. Maharashtra has withdrawn consent. Yet, with the consent of the Supreme Court, investigation against Anil Deshmukh is going. What about Tamil Nadu? Lavasia complained the state doesn't want the complaint investigated by the CBI. Yet the CBI is doing it. So the CBI or the complaining authority can always move the court. Court is not bound by the withdrawal of consent. Court can order investigation even in the states where the consent has been withdrawn. And that is the legal position. I'm sure Mr. Nigam will agree with me. So the failure of the complaining authority and the CBI to rush to court and get clearance. And by the way, this crime emanates from Gujarat. Has Gujarat withdrawn consent also? At least you can start investigation in one state and move to another state, then there is no problem. So these are not excuses to be trotted out. And if they are trotted out, there is something fishy.
Can I answer?
Okay. Gopal Krishna Agarwal wants to respond. Lack of political will, is that behind the delay in investigation? Is that the reason behind delay in India getting to know about this big fraud in the banking system, sir?
Heenaji, we have to understand when Nigamji was saying about the withdrawal of consent, it is a political will, Shantanuji, that we are saying here. It is the political will of those states that not to cooperate with the investigation. Only that is there. CBI has the way forward to go, and it will go and it will move ahead. Second thing I just would like to say is, when Mr. Garg was saying, these financial frauds are very complicated. You have to understand that you need certain laws to deal with these frauds. And over the years, what we have done is we have brought certain laws which have strengthened the investigation, identification. RBI has been given the power to, RBI has been actively asking banks to identify bad loans, recognize them, and work on the recovery path. And therefore, IBC, NCLT, Benami Properties Act, Fugitive Offenders Act, it was 27 years that the Benami Property Act was passed by the parliament and not notified. So the thing is, the intention, political intention before 2014 was to camouflage the loans. That is the only thing. These camouflage bad loans and not to let
Sir,
banks
what
recover
happened
them.
before
So we
2014
have,
is
no,
not
let
going
me
to
finish,
change the
let me-
situation,
give
the
me some
fraud that
time.
we are discussing today. Like Mr. Sen rightly mentioned earlier, that the fraud has happened, it has been committed. Now the
Yes,
focus
so
really
to
should be,
tackle this
instead of
fraud-
indulging in this blame game here, sir, the
No, I'm
focus
not
should be
indulging in blame
how to
game.
ensure
I'm
that we
saying-
get this money back. What are
Yeah,
you
that
doing
is-
to recover this money,
Yes,
sir?
that's what I'm telling you. That's what I'm telling you. We have changed several laws. First thing, RBI has come out with several circulars, regulations, and steps where identification of bad loans, recognition of bad loans, and recovery of the bad loans have to be started by the banks. One thing. Certain laws were also required at the government level, which we have put in force. IBC is one of the major reform that is required to recover NPA. First, you recognize them, then come out with IBC process, NCLT code that we have done, insolvency and bank, then this Benami Property Act was required, where you confiscate promoters' property where they
Okay, so you've taken several steps. That's what you're telling us. Deshratan Nigam wants to respond. Professor Gaurav Vallabh also wants to come in. Then I'll go across to Mr. Garg. Quick response, Deshratan Nigam. No, I got your point, sir. I know several measures have been taken and you're listing out those measures for our viewers.
Those person, if a policeman catches somebody, will you blame the policeman that now you have caught the person, therefore you are to blame? We are taken steps which is now catching.
I'm not blaming the policeman here for catching the person, sir. I am blaming the policeman here. I'm questioning the policeman here for the delay in catching. And here, by the way, you have not even caught the person. The promoters, I don't know where they are. What we have right now is just that a fraud has been committed, sir. So policeman hasn't really caught anybody. Let me be very clear on this.
Yeah, so law is
Okay, because Deshratan Nigam wanted to respond. Sir, I got your point, sir. Yes, Professor Gaurav Vallabh after Deshratan Nigam. Very quickly, sir.
See, the fact is that as per the process, CBI has already issued lookout circulars so that they don't leave the country if already not clear.
Yes.
So that is a very important step. Now, secondly, the CBI handicap is taken care of the constitutional courts, which is the High Court and the Supreme Court, where you can approach them, and then the actual, the FIR is in 2020. So, and then the investigation started, its complex investigation. In my opinion, the CBI started its investigation subsequent to that FIR. So you can't say the entire period before that is that CBI is responsible for that. It's the bank's affairs and most of them were private banks and consortium, and that they had come to the conclusion after.
So can't blame CBI completely. That's what Deshratan Nigam is saying. Professor Gaurav Vallabh now. Sir, I have very little time. I have to quickly take the closing comments also. You made your point, sir. Professor Gaurav Vallabh, very quickly.
Three statements.
Okay, let him complete. 10 seconds. Deshratan Nigam, please complete. Gaurav, 1 second. Gaurav, 1 second. Mr. Nigam, please complete your point. 10 seconds, please.
And if you look at when the parameters of declaring NPA was changed, then this 5.35 trillion rupees that you're talking about, they all almost belong to UPA era, because of the nature and the process was changed.
Let's get them.
So they were 2014. So
but that is not the issue before us.
Yes. Again, let me repeat. We are not discussing what happened, how it happened. let's not make it a political debate. I have two political representatives here from BJP and Congress, and these two understand business, understand economy, and that is the reason why they are here today. It was not supposed to be a political slugfest at all. It's about understanding the issue and to ensure that something is done so that this loot stops someday at least. Professor Gaurav Vallabh, make your point.
Heena, three fine statements. Mr. Nigam is saying lookout notice is issued. Nigam Saab, when lookout notice was issued? After 2 years of SBI filing complaint to CBI, after 3 years of the account classified as fraudulent. Number two, the gentleman from BJP can't understand there is a difference between fraud and NPA. He is still mixing up between every NPA is not fraud, my dear friend. Please try to understand. You are not having that basic understanding. And number three, Heena, that in FY 2021, in financial year 2021, as per the RBI's response to the RTI, the recovery from the fraud is 0.7%. So where is the recovery? Where is your reforms? Why recovery is not happening? I'm not giving my data. This is Reserve Bank data that in FY21, the recovery from these fraud accounts is 0.7%. So if there is a $5.35 trillion rupees fraud, the recovery will be less.
So measures might be there, but unfortunately, they are not really helping us. They're not really helping the banking system. That's your view, because recovery hasn't really happened. I have very little time left, and I want to go across to Mr. Garg and Mr. Shantanu Sen for their closing comments. Mr. Garg, now in the report of Ernst & Young, it was also mentioned that even the provision or the agreement of corporate debt restructuring was being violated. So even these measures that are in place today, they probably have loopholes which are continuously being exploited.
It's possible that the CDR provisions and conditions might be violated, but since we have very small time, I'll just make two comments. One, the IBC has indeed helped the bank to recover quite a lot of NPAs, not much of a fraud, but quite a lot of NPAs there. But what actually worries me more is that for whatever reasons, we can go it separately, the credit to the businesses has declined substantially. It used to be only 3 years back, 4 years back, 43% of the entire banking credit was for businesses and industry. Today, it's less than 30%. Second, the trend, most of the credit now is going by way of being guaranteed by the government, under the guarantee. And therefore, these risky credits, how would they sort of fold up? How would they come up in times to come? Is something to be quite worried about. Many of them may turn out to be NPAs and frauds in times to come, and therefore I don't think we should look back only to 2013 and before to say that the NPAs were of that time. I think we should be looking more closer to what's going to happen and what's happening right now.
Okay. Mr. Shantanu Sen, I want to give you the last word now. You've been the Joint Director in Central Bureau of Investigation. Now that scam is out there in front of us, what is going to be your advice to the investigative agency?
My view is we should stop talking about the past. What has happened has happened. The fraud has taken place.
Yes.
Let's get hold of the fraudsters. The country will be mighty pleased if the fraudsters like Vijay Mallya, Choksi's, and the rest of them, including the ABG, Agarwals, and others involved, are hauled up.
Absolutely.
The tragedy of this country is that the big fraudsters are not hauled up. And as you started the discussion, it is the smaller fries who are hauled up and humiliated. Who protects the big fraudsters? That is the question which we should go into. These debates are useless when we discuss what happened, why they're being delayed. The point is, take up the fraudsters who have looted the country for so many years, including the UPA and the NPA era, and none of them have been hauled up. The last government at least hauled up the fraudsters at the stock exchange, and nobody was spared, including the RBI chairman himself. He had to go after 2 years. He didn't get an extension. So many banking officials, Marga Bandhu and the rest of them, were all hauled up. Where is that hauling up happening now? My lament is that fraudsters are getting away. Those who are helping the fraudsters are not being hauled up, and the country is being looted.
And that loot now needs to stop. Thank you very much, all of you gentlemen, for joining us here on this very, very important debate on Mirror Now this evening. We'll, of course, be tracking the story very, very closely ahead as well. For the moment, slipping into a very short break, there's lots lined up for you on the other side as well. We'll tell you what happened across the metros today. Stay with us.